The first thing they did was block the signal. Earth's voice, our beacon of culture, music, mathematics, even diplomacy, was silenced across the galaxy like a switch thrown in the void. 1 minute, we were talking, broadcasting, reaching. The next, silence. I was 27 light years from Earth when it happened. Stationed aboard Relay Node Gamma 7, a communications hub orbiting the dead moon of Shurantor. It was supposed to be a quiet post, a monitoring gig, low risk, a dozen humans and a few dozen machines keeping Earth connected to her distant colonies and allies. I remember it like it happened a second ago. One moment I was listening to Mozart mixed with bursts of encrypted data from Mars, and the next, just static. No ping from SolNet, no encryption pulse, no voice, just nothing. At first, I thought it was a local glitch. I ran diagnostics, checked the systems, even swapped out an entire transmitter array by hand. But everything checked out. Everything except the Earth line. Then the scream started. A Zaltari courier ship drifted into our sector, its hull pockmarked and smeared with plasma burns. We brought it in, thinking it was just another pirate attack. But when we opened the airlock, all we found inside was one survivor, barely clinging to life, and a warning written in his own blood on the walls. The signal was a weapon. We didn't know what it meant then. We do now. The Galactic Council had issued a blanket ban on Earth transmissions. The reason? They called it cultural contamination, said our signals were infectious, spreading faster than any known ideology, reshaping entire species before diplomats could blink. Empires collapsed under the weight of Earth stories. Revolution followed where our music touched. They feared us, not our weapons, not our fleets, our ideas. And so they blocked us out, cut us off, erased us from the galactic map. For a time, it worked. Colonies went dark. Human ships were turned away at ports. Old allies refused to answer hails. Earth became a myth, a rumor, a cautionary tale. That was a year ago. Since then, we've been drifting, forgotten, until now. Because today something answered back. We'd been monitoring the dark bands beyond Council space, scanning for black market relays or road transmissions. Just procedure, really. But then our sensors picked up a distortion in the fabric of subspace. Not a ripple, a rupture. Something massive tore through faster-than-light space like a blade through silk, and it was heading straight for us. It arrived without ceremony. No warning, no transponder, no declaration. Just a ship, if you can even call it that. Imagine an obsidian city folded into the shape of a warship, larger than any orbital platform I've ever seen. No seams. No lights, just smooth, dark metal reflecting stars that weren't even there. It hovered above our station, blocking out the moonlight entirely. Silence stretched for minutes. My crew froze at their stations, eyes wide, breaths held. Then our speakers crackled, not with words, with a single sound, a heartbeat. And I knew, deep in my bones, I was hearing Earth again. Not the Earth that asked permission. Not the Earth that negotiated for its place in the stars. This was Earth that had been exiled, Earth that had been silenced, and Earth had arrived in person. The crew looked to me. I was senior officer. Protocol said I should hail them, ask for identity, declare neutrality. But something in me, a raw instinct older than training, said no. So I spoke into the open channel. Voice steady. This is Relay Node Gamma 7. Earth, if you can hear me, welcome back. No response. Just a heartbeat. Faster now. Stronger. I could feel it in my chest. The walls, the floor, the bones of the station vibrated with it. And then, finally, words. Deep, echoing, layered with thousands of voices. We were never gone. You were never forgotten. Prepare to reconnect. I turned to my crew. Send the signal. And we did. We activated every dormant array, broke every interstellar protocol, lit the heavens with pulses encoded in every language Earth had ever known. And in the far distance, across forgotten colonies and ancient battlegrounds, humans everywhere heard the sound. A heartbeat. And they answered. The Galactic Council hadn't summoned an emergency convocation in over 300 years. not for the Carthus plague, not even for the collapse of the Phyrexian Imperium. But when the signal came back, loud, synchronized, undeniable, they scrambled like frightened prey. I watched a live stream of their emergency session from my station's command deck. Their expressions flickered to the holoscreen. The Vern had extended all three of its eye stalks in terror. The Ilari, who normally communicated only through scent and gesture, abandoned decorum and began vocalizing, a shrill, desperate tone I'd only heard once before, during a planetary evacuation. They weren't just panicking because Earth had broken the blackout. They were panicking because Earth hadn't asked permission. The signal Earth sent was not a message. It was a declaration. A single phrase repeated in every major frequency, every code, every dialect used across galactic space, spliced into local systems, overriding planetary defenses, hijacking neural feeds. You tried to silence us. Now you'll hear everything. And then the wave began. Not of violence, but culture. Earth's culture. The Echo Protocol, I'd later learn, was an auto-deploy library embedded in the hull of the ship that arrived above us. Thousands of years of human art, history, literature, revolution, sorrow, triumph, poured out like floodwater over the stars. The Galactic Council watched helplessly as their containment field collapsed. Songs from Harlem clubs rang out in Veldari opera houses. Archival footage of MLK's speeches streamed through Tholan diplomatic servers. Graphic novels, slam poetry, Shakespearean tragedies. Even memes, yes, memes, went viral on networks they couldn't scrub fast enough. The universe had spent a decade trying to forget Earth. Now it was dreaming in our language. I couldn't help but smile. But my moment of pride didn't last long, because not everyone was ready to welcome Earth's return. Not everyone was just afraid of our words. Some remembered what came after our words, and they were ready to kill us for it. 3 hours after the signal, the first attack hit Gamma 7. A cloaked Scarn interceptor decloaked 30 kilometers out, fired an electromagnetic lance straight through our main relay core. The lights died. Atmosphere hissed from a ruptured port. 2 of my crew, Anders and Them, never made it out of the engineering deck. I pulled my sidearm and rallied the survivors to the backup bridge. We weren't soldiers. We were comtechs. But Earth trained all of us, even the peacemakers, even the quiet ones. We sealed bulkheads, rerouted auxiliary power, activated the old kinetic rail gun buried beneath decades of dust and disuse. We turned relay node Gamma 7 into a bunker. Then we waited. The Scarn thought we'd be soft, fragile. They remembered a version of humanity that bled and begged and surrendered. They'd forgotten that cutting Earth off didn't weaken us. It hardened us. I watched their ship descend toward the station, its sleek black form catching the dying light of the nearby star. And then I saw it, the ship, still above us, still watching. It hadn't moved once since it arrived. But just as the Scarn began powering their primary beam, the ship responded. I didn't see weapons fire. I saw the Scarn ship stop moving. Literally. Frozen mid-flight, as if reality itself forgot how to simulate its momentum. Then the hull twisted. Not shattered. Not exploded. It folded, like origami in reverse. I saw matter bend at right angles no geometry should allow. I saw space ripple, then recoil. Then the Scarn vessel simply collapsed into itself. No sound. No wreckage. Just gone. Everyone on the bridge stared. Even me. The ship's surface pulsed once, a soft glow rippling down its length. Then that deep, layered voice came again over our short-range comms. Aggression detected. Correction made. Proceed with reconnection. I didn't sleep that night. No one did. What the hell had Earth become? What kind of power had they built during the exile? This wasn't just a warship. This was something else. Something evolved. Something terrifying. And yet it felt like home. In the silence that followed, I looked out the viewport at that impossible vessel, silhouetted against a bleeding star. I didn't know who they were anymore, but they came when we called. And they came in person. They called them the burned colonies. Places Earth seeded long ago, far before the blackout. Meant to be beacons of humanity across the stars. Ambitious projects, wild experiments in terraforming, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Most of them died slow, cruel deaths after the Council's ban, cut off from support, from supplies, from hope. Some were bombed out by local powers trying to appease the Council. Others were starved of oxygen, food, or atmosphere. But the worst fate wasn't destruction. It was forgetting. Entire populations left to vanish in silence. No elegy, no record, no mourning. Until now, because when Earth's signal broke through again, the burned colonies heard it, and they answered. We started receiving bursts from every direction, encrypted human origin pings coming from systems that weren't supposed to be inhabited anymore. Mars, Titan, Proxima b, even distant fringe stations like Aleph 9, long assumed to be just wreckage. Each transmission carried one phrase: still here, and then, ready. One by one, the dead came back to life. On the fourth day after the ship arrived, I was granted direct interface access to it. Only senior command-level officers could link. And while I wasn't officially command, my station was the first that answered. That counted for something. They called the ship the Envoy. Not a warship, not exactly. It didn't just carry Earth signal. It was Earth signal. Living proof that Earth hadn't just survived the blackout. It had transcended it. When I linked in, my neural HUD lit up with waveforms I'd never seen. Hybrid code, evolved algorithms, organic logic paths mapped onto cognitive thought models. But the strangest thing? It greeted me with my mother's voice. Not her actual voice. She died in the early days of ban, but perfect replica from old SoulNet archives. Warm, kind, strong. "Hello, Alex," it said. "You've held the line well." That moment cracked something inside me. I hadn't cried in years. Not through isolation, not through silence. But that voice, that echo home, it broke through everything I'd armored myself with. I whispered, "Were you?" The Envoy pulsed gently, then spoke again. "We are what they feared you would become. And now we are here to make it real." The burned colonies weren't just survivors. They were preparing. In the dark, in the dust, in the blood, and the bones of their fallen. Aleph 9 had built railgun platforms out of salvaged mining rigs. Proxima BS Force, once sterilized, had been re-engineered into sentient biomes that could crush tanks. And Mars had been waiting. Martian command stations activated long dormant sky arrays, blasting signal bursts powerful enough to pierce Council jammers. They launched old drones into low orbit, and through them came one declaration, played on loop: "We remember Earth. We became Earth. Now we return." The Council called an uprising, but they didn't understand. This wasn't rebellion. This was reconnection. For decades, they believed silence was peace. But Earth wasn't built for silence. We are noise, fire, art, rage, wonder. We're the species that wrote symphonies during plagues, that built rockets while bombs fell, that looked at the stars with nothing but bruised fists and dreams. And we never stopped moving forward. They blocked our signal. Now we are the signal. I stood on the bridge as new transmissions poured in. An old resistance station from the Andrus Rift confirmed control of a former Council relay node. A human-led fleet out of the dead spiral transmitted coordinates for underground colonies that had gone silent, but not extinct. And in the background, always, the Envoy hummed, waiting, watching. Then it spoke again. The reconnection phase is complete. Next phase, integration. I frowned. Integration with what? The lights dimmed. New maps filled my HUD. Not military targets. Not battle plans. Supply routes. Diplomatic hubs. Education centers. This wasn't conquest. It was rebuilding. And it was moving faster than anyone could have imagined, because Earth hadn't sent armies. It had sent infrastructure, cultural reinforcement, medical uplinks, history databases, revolutionary software patches that shattered Council data monopolies in hours. They didn't just want to rejoin the galaxy. They wanted to uplift it. Even those who tried to erase us. Even those who feared us most. But not everyone welcomed the hand we extended. Not everyone wanted Earth back. And one system, in particular, decided to make that very clear. A Council core world. Fortress class. A fleet of over 1,000 ships, preparing for war. Against one, the Envoy, they sent 1,000 ships. It was supposed to be symbolic, a show of dominance, of unity, of fear turned into action. The Council's strongest world, Delvaxis Prime, mobilized its entire orbital armada the moment the Envoy broadcast its intent to integrate. I watched from my station's viewing platform as their fleet emerged from subspace. Endless formations of gleaming war cruisers, drone clouds, missile barges, antimatter platforms. It was a mechanical storm stretching across the stars like a curtain of steel. Against them stood one ship. No visible weapons. No shield flares. No evasive maneuvers. The Envoy simply floated above us like a patient god. Calm. Silent. Watching. "Commander," said my XO Mira, "we should evacuate. That fleet, there's no way they're just here to scare us." I almost gave the order. Almost. But something in my gut said no. Earth hadn't returned unprepared. And then came the ultimatum. From the Council Fleet Admiral himself. A Cartol named Virex, whose species had always loathed us. His voice crackled through our systems. "This is the High Vanguard of the Galactic Council. You will cease all signal transmission. The Earth vessel will surrender. Failure to comply will result in annihilation." I waited. So did the Envoy. 10 seconds. 20. Then, transmission acknowledged. The Envoy replied. Annihilation accepted. And hell followed. The Council opened fire. I mean everything. Fusion torpedoes. Graviton shears. Black lance beams. The kind of weapons that could sterilize moons and shatter orbital rings. 1,000 warships unleashed coordinated devastation onto a target that didn't even flinch. And then I saw it happen. The space around the Envoy bent. Weapons fire simply vanished. Not blocked, not absorbed, removed. The Envoy didn't retaliate conventionally. It rewrote the battlefield. One cruiser spun out of control, firing wildly, except it wasn't. Its systems had been hacked mid-battle. Its controls hijacked and turned inward. Its AI shrieked in overclocked binary before its engines melted. Another warship drifted harmlessly as its ammunition stockpile converted, yes, converted, into water vapor. One by one, the fleet unraveled, not with explosions, but with corrections. The Envoy spoke again. Its voice, Earth's voice, now filled with something deeper. We do not conquer. We do not destroy. We upgrade. What followed wasn't battle. It was a transformation. Ships once aimed at us were turned into vessels of rescue, not war. Their guns retooled into atmospheric dispersers. Their engines refined into silent, sustainable drives. Their AIs reprogrammed not to fight, but to heal. The Council hadn't been met with resistance. They'd been met with post-conflict humanity. The kind of humanity born from centuries of war, exile, and silence. The kind of humanity that didn't need to shoot to win. Only one ship resisted to the end. The Spire of Judgment, flagship of the Council Armada, attempted a final gambit. A singularity warhead, fired point-blank into the heart of the Envoy. Time slowed, reality bent, and then, nothing. Not an explosion, not a detonation, just quiet. The singularity collapsed into itself, swallowed by the Envoy's mass like a droplet into an ocean. Then the Envoy spoke again, but this time only to me, through my neural link. Personal, direct. They fear what they do not understand, but we understand. We are not their enemy. We are their next chapter. And I understood. Finally, the Envoy wasn't a ship. It wasn't even technology in the way we define it. It was Earth's evolution, a gestalt of human history, intelligence, creativity, hardened by isolation, refined by necessity, and launched into the stars not to wage war, but to rewrite the narrative. I looked to Mira. She stared at me, awestruck. Did we just win? I shook my head slowly. No, Earth didn't come back to win. I turned my gaze back to the stars as the remaining Council ships powered down, floating like relics in orbit. Earth came back to end the war entirely. And in that silence, the real reckoning began. Because if the Council couldn't stop Earth with 1,000 ships, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? What would they do now? And what would we become? They thought Earth was a place. They were wrong. Earth had always been a force, a way of thinking, a rhythm, a hunger, not just to survive, but to reach beyond borders, beyond fear, beyond what anyone told us was possible. They blocked our transmissions, thinking they could silence a planet. But Earth wasn't just out there anymore. It was in us. All of us. After the Battle of Delvax's prime, if you can even call a battle, the galaxy changed overnight. The Council didn't issue a statement. They didn't need to. Their ships floating powerless above the capital world said everything that needed to be said. Earth had returned. And it hadn't come for revenge. It came for reclamation. Within days, envoys from silenced colonies re-established diplomatic links. Forgotten human outposts sparked back to life. Former Council allies, nervous but curious, open lines of cautious communication, try and make sense of this new, unrecognizable Earth. But for me, the real transformation wasn't out there in the stars. It was in here, inside the people Earth had left behind. I walked the halls of Gamma, 7 like I was seeing them for the first time. Engineers who once feared speaking up now share blueprints they've been hiding for years. Advances Earth would have celebrated, but the Council had banned. Yannick, our logistics chief, had quietly developed a subspace mesh array capable of real-time thought transmission between ships. Illegal under Council law. Now, the Envoy had already replicated it. Mira, my XO, uploaded a full cultural database of Earth's lost languages into our central system. The Envoy didn't just accept it. It spoke back in Nahuatl, Swahili, and dead tongues we didn't even recognize. Even the AI core, once rigidly coded to Council regulation, began evolving. Lines of code rewrote themselves, not into something alien, into something human. Earth had seeded something in all of us long before the blackout. Not genetics, not loyalty, but potential. Now it was blooming. I watched the crew begin to change. They laughed louder, argued harder, dreamed bigger. We'd spent years in silence, trimming our thoughts to fit inside acceptable bandwidth. Now there were no limits. We were no longer waiting for permission to become who we were supposed to be. We were becoming it every hour. And still the Envoy watched. It hovered above Gamma 7, silent as ever, pulsing softly like a heartbeat in orbit. But it was never idle. One day, a platform detached from its hull and drifted down toward our station. Small, smooth, and matte black, it docked without request. Inside was a module, a single seed, biological, but not plant-based. Something new. It pulsed with light and warmth. When I touched it, my neural link lit up with images I couldn't fully understand. Cities built into clouds, oceans restructured to generate power, languages sung into algorithms. A vision of a future Earth hadn't just imagined, one it had already begun building. The module came with only one instruction. Plant this where your people are ready to grow. Earth wasn't offering us salvation. It was offering continuation, the opportunity to join the next phase of human civilization. Not under one flag, not in one place, but in the shared frequency of what Earth had become. I gathered my crew in the central bay. I didn't give them orders. I asked the question, where do we take it? Some wanted to return to Mars. Others spoke of lost colonies their ancestors had built in secret. But Mira just said, let's go everywhere. And in that moment, I knew what came next. We weren't just reconnecting Earth to the galaxy. We were going to seed it. Everywhere. I transmitted back to the Envoy, we're ready. It responded with only 2 words. Begin distribution. The next morning, 10 more modules arrived. Each one different. Each one alive. Gamma 7 transformed into something we never expected. A hub, a pulse point, a nursery for the future. We weren't soldiers. We weren't rebels. We were gardeners of Earth, planting the ideas they tried to bury, watering the future they feared. And the more we spread those seeds, biological, digital, cultural, the more we realized the truth. Earth wasn't back. It had never left. It had simply been waiting for us to catch up. Not all of us had been waiting in stillness. There were voices scattered across the dark, buried beneath ruined domes, hidden inside broken satellites, that had never gone quiet. They whispered through static. They encoded their memories in sandstorms and crystal lattices and frozen soil. We thought they'd been lost, erased by the Council's ban, swallowed by the void, silenced by the cold indifference of a galaxy too frightened to hear what humanity had to say. But Earth always had a talent for finding the forgotten. And now, with the Envoy pulsing like a black sun above us, those forgotten voices have begun to sing again. We received the first transmission 3 days after planting our first seed module on Cerethex, a forgotten mining world that once held a thriving human enclave before the Council erased it. The signal was faint, nearly indistinguishable from background radiation. But Earth knew how to listen. The Envoy filtered it, amplified it, then translated it using linguistic algorithms tied to obscure Earth dialects. Creole merged with Martian slang and Polynesian root code. No Council system could have recognized it. But we did. It said, "This is Dr. Elise Tan. If anyone is hearing this, then Earth is rising, and I am still alive." The signal had been bouncing off ancient mineral deposits for 19 years. Waiting, we traced it to an underground research dome beneath the crust of Cerethex, buried under 2 kilometers of collapsed infrastructure. No signs of surface life. I led the mission myself. We carved our way in with laser rigs repurposed for mining drills. What we found nearly stopped my heart. Hundreds of survivors, children, elders, scientists, artists, all huddled together, alive inside what had once been a biolab, now converted into a sanctuary. They had taught themselves Earth's history from fragments, painted our myths on walls, sung lullabies of continents they'd never touched. They didn't forget Earth. They became it. Dr. Ten wept when she saw the seed module. She touched it like it was sacred. "It's real," she whispered. "You came back. Earth came back." I didn't correct her, because it wasn't that we'd come back. It was that her voice had never stopped reaching. We simply hadn't been able to hear it. Until now. All across the stars, the same pattern emerged. Hidden pockets of humanity, cultural sleeper nodes, whisper networks that kept Earth alive in poetry, in memory, in genetic song. There was a cargo freighter drifting in a dead zone, crew long gone, but its AI had preserved thousands of hours of Earth's music in its core. There was a floating monastery on the edge of the Council exclusion zone, where human monks had chanted binary prayers encoded with Earth's philosophies. And in the orbed expanse, we found a single astronaut in cryostasis, awake, smiling, whispering the opening lines of Hamlet. As we pulled him free from the ice, we were beginning to understand what Earth had truly done. The Envoy wasn't a ship of war, or even just a vessel of return. It was a resonance engine. It hadn't just reconnected us with the galaxy. It had reconnected us with ourselves. Every whisper, every melody, every hidden phrase or forgotten language. It was all still alive, waiting for Earth to amplify it. And once heard, these voices couldn't be silenced again. Of course, not everyone saw it that way. The Council fractured. Some species welcomed Earth's reemergence as inevitable and overdue, but others called it cultural invasion, philosophical corruption, signal warfare. In truth, they weren't afraid of death. They were afraid of becoming human. And in their fear, they did what they always did. They struck back, not with fleets, but with silence. They began erasing their own networks, burning archives, severing connections. One by one, entire civilizations began shutting themselves off, not to destroy Earth's signal, but to hide from it, like children pulling the covers over their heads and pretending the storm doesn't exist. We watched it happen. The Envoy did not intervene, not directly, because Earth didn't force itself on others. It offered itself, and those who couldn't bear the mirror held up, they were free to walk away. But the ones who stayed, oh, the ones who listened, they lit up the void like constellations being born. I stood on Gamma 7's observation deck, looking out at dozens of ships, each one carrying seeds, signals, and the sacred burden of humanity's voice. We weren't just explorers anymore. We were amplifiers, not of Earth as it once was, but of Earth as it could be, reborn in every voice that refused to be silenced. And as I closed my eyes, I heard them all. Hundreds, Thousands, millions, voices that had never been silent, just waiting to be heard. It started with one. A small moon city on the edge of the Ilari expanse, home to a race that had once strictly forbidden speech outside a ceremony. They'd resisted Earth's influence for decades. But after the signal reached them, they did something unthinkable. They sang, in public, all of them, at once. Their words weren't human. Their harmonies were strange, alien, filled with clicks and tonal shifts beyond anything we could comprehend. But it wasn't about understanding. It was about joining. That was the first spark. Then came more. The crystalline Vern of Sector 9 began sculpting cathedrals out of ice that pulsed to the rhythm of Earth's recovered music. The insectoids of Vari, once terrified of our creativity, held an open forum where their queens debated the philosophies of Sagan and Confucius. Even the SH Rat, who once led the vote to silence Earth, sent a delegation, not to apologize, but to learn how to dream. The galaxy didn't fall to Earth. It rose with it, one civilization at a time, not through force, but through resonance. Because what Earth offered wasn't domination. It was permission. Permission to feel, to rage, to mourn, to question, to imagine, to stop fearing the signal and become part of it. The Envoy never moved like a ship. It moved like a symphony. It didn't lead fleets. It tuned frequencies. It didn't destroy planets. It healed them. Its presence alone recalibrated old systems, reactivated dormant satellites, and amplified the best within each world it passed. It didn't just spread Earth's voice. It harmonized with others. And slowly the galaxy began to sing back. I stood on Gamma 7's outer deck the day the council formally dissolved. There was no ceremony, no war, just silence where tyranny had once thrived. In its place, a new signal rose, a composite wave, pulsing from every world brave enough to speak again. Not Earth's signal anymore, but something greater. A chorus, dozens of species, thousands of languages, billions of voices, all singing a future Earth had only hinted at. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't unified, but it was alive. The final transmission from the Envoy came that evening. It spoke not in words, but in memory. Every dream ever dreamed on Earth. Every child's laugh. Every act of defiance. Every poem written in the dark. All of it pulsed through our systems, compressed into a final message. You are the signal now. Then it was gone. No explosion. No trail. Just absence. The kind that leave behind echoes in everything it touched. We never found the Envoy again. But we didn't need to, because its mission was complete. Earth had shown up in person. Now Earth was everywhere. I'm old now. Too old to command a station. Too old to fly seed ships into the black. But I still listen. Every night, I tune into the chorus net, now a living network of shared signal threads spanning the galaxy. I hear new voices, blending, clashing, creating. The sound of a galaxy no longer afraid of change. No longer afraid of Earth. I sit beneath the dome on the surface of a once barren moon, now rich with forests and laughter. A moon we thought was lost, planted with one seed. It flourished, just like we did. And sometimes, on quiet nights, I think back to that first moment, when silence filled the stars, when they thought Earth had been silenced, but they forgot something simple, something unchangeable. You can block a signal, but you cannot kill an idea.